Welcome back to Music 101. This is the final chapter for the March 4th lecture. I'll be posting all of these lectures online and just here in a few minutes, as well as all of these PowerPoints so that you can have them at your reviewing pleasure. Remember, we will not be meeting in person until your exam on March 25th, which will be open notes as well as open book. But it is really good idea to watch all of these lectures so that you can, and you have 2 weeks to do so since we have spring break in there as well. So please watch these lectures. It will make life so much more sense. And we'll be diving into a totally different time period when we get back in April. We went from my most favorite part of Baroque music to my least favorite part of Baroque music. As a keyboardist and as a pianist, I hated playing fugues. So Johann Sebastian Bach was known for his fugue, or as my orchestra teacher used to say, the fugu. It's not the fugu, it's the fugue. And I hated them when I was learning piano in college just because they are so hard. And I thought I got away for majoring in violin. Didn't happen. Had to play a fugue for my senior recital. Again, hated it. But it's a very, very influential part of the Baroque era. So keyboard instruments. So we've talked about string instruments. We've talked about our woodwinds. We've talked about our brass. Everything in the Baroque era that we've talked about. Now we are talking about what the keyboard instruments are doing right now. So the technological advances here, there's new levels of refinement. And musicians are broadening the technique. They're becoming a little bit more virtuosic. And keyboards are inherently suited to polyphonic performances. So right now, the two main keyboard instruments that are in the Baroque era are the harpsichord. And if you look inside of a harpsichord, there are little feet, and on the end of each little feet are little quills, and they pluck the string instead of the hammers on the piano, which hit the string, so the tone is not sustained. And dynamic extremes are not possible, only subtle nuances. So later on when we get into classical music, which will be our next set of lecture, you will hear differences in dynamics will be loud and soft because the piano is able to do that, unlike the harpsichord that can't. The next one is the organ, and German builders were the main people building these in the 1600s and 1700s. There were a set of pipes contrasting tone colors, multiple keyboards. Sometimes they have two keyboards that you would play at the same time with terraced dynamics. So the more, basically, like you've heard the saying, pull out all the stops, that comes from the organ because they literally have all of these stops that they pull out, and that makes the dynamics. So we're back to our boy, J.S. Bach. He was a renowned keyboard player. He was sought after consultant for church organ builders, and he was famous for improvisation. He was beast, basically. So what type of music did the keyboard instruments play? So one of them was a toccata, and a prelude. These were free-form pieces. Remember we talked about free-form that don't have a specific, like, A, B, A, whatever form. They just keep going through, based on improvisation and often written out later. It showcases the performer's dexterity. It has highly contrasting musical ideas and tempos, often paired with an organized form. So for example, the one that we listened to in an earlier lecture, Toccata and Fugue in D minor by J.S. Bach. The fugue is a systematic elaboration of a short musical idea. Basically, guys, it's a round. It's a really complex round, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about in just a second. It's written for solo keyboard, a group of instruments or voices, or a solo instrument, violin, since I played fugue. Yay! So this is a spectacular Baroque organ in St. Bavo's Cathedral in Haarlem, the Netherlands. Isn't it beautiful? Like, guys, when I went to Europe, the Baroque architecture was breathtaking. So you can see this, it's a perfect example of Baroque design and decoration with how elaborate everything is. And as we've heard so far, the music has reflected that. The fugue, yay! It is a contrapuntal composition based on imitation. What does that mean? Oh, wow, I'm glad. I thought you would never ask. Contrapuntal just means something that is based on counterpoint, which is two or more independent melodic lines. So you have one melodic line and then a second melodic line, and then they just kind of weave themselves into each other. And based on imitation. Remember, imitation is where you take one section and you literally just repeat it in a different voice or in the keyboard in a different hand or whatever. The subject or the main theme is the unifying idea. So the subject is the theme. The answer is the subject imitated in another voice. This is a classical example, like a classical music example, but da 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 da. That would be the subject being repeated and imitated. So the subject and the answer. Then we have a counter subject, which is a different theme completely heard against the composer. Against the subject. Why I cannot talk. The fugue is also broken up into the exposition, which is the first section, and the subject is presented in each voice one at a time. The episodes are little interludes lacking the subject. So this is probably was improvised and yeah. The different contrapuntal devices, guys, don't really worry about this. All this means is augmentation just means that you stretch out the rhythm. Diminution just means that you make the rhythm shorter. So if it was boo, 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 augmentation would be boo, 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 boo. If the rhythm, remember, was boo, 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 diminution would just be boop, 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 boop. That's all that means. Retrograde is just reversing the melody. So if it was boo, 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 the retrograde would be boo, 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 boo. Actually, I did that backwards. I'm sorry. Inversion would be the flipping of it. And I don't remember what stretto means. I'll have to go back and remind myself. So these works have fugue within their piece. The Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, which you listened to, Messiah, choruses by Handel, and I'm not going to say this, but the opening movement of one of Bach's pieces. Let me remind myself what stretto means. Oh, it's like cut time. So it'd be like if the melody was do 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 do, it'd be like do 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 do, like so it speeds up in a quicker time. That's all it means. It just gets faster. So which is kind of the same thing as diminution, but whatever, diminution. Cool beans. We are gonna keep pulling through. This is a picture of kind of what a fugue is like. So you see all the overlapping, interlocking. It's just a big hot mess. It really is. So here's an example of the subject is highlighted in blue, or the melody. And the answer is what is pictured above it. And so you can see the jumps are similar. See? Boo, 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 boo. Do, 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 do. So it's the same thing, but look, two different notes. So that would be the subject. This would be the answer. So it's imitated because it's the same thing, but it's not using the same notes. So I hope that helps you get that. So in Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, which we talked about, they have 24 preludes and fugues in each one. And it was intended as a teaching aid and also to show off the new tuning system. In The Art of Fugue, there are 14 fugues and 4 canons. It has a systematic exploration of fugal devices, contrapuntal mastery, and ultimate achievement. It's keyboard music, also recorded by orchestras and chamber ensembles. Here's a picture of the harpsichord. I want to show you guys kind of what inside of the harpsichord, so you can kind of see what I mean by the plucking of the string. But this is what a harpsichord looks like. Notice that the keys are black and the white keys are black and the black keys are white, which is complete opposite of a piano keyboard. That is very confusing if you are a pianist and then you go and you play a harpsichord, which I have done. It's very, very confusing. Great. So here is a schematic of kind of, I would suggest when we're listening, because we're going to listen to this fugue in just a little bit. When we're listening to this fugue, I would highly suggest you turning to page 158 in your textbook and following along with this, because it'll make way more sense than me trying to explain it to you and not seeing this. So we're going to listen to this. It's a 4-voice fugue, meaning there are 4 different people or groups of people that are going to be singing or playing the subject. That's all a 4-voice fugue mean. It's, in other words, all 4 of these voices are going to be singing the subject or playing the subject at some point. It outlines a D minor triad. Remember, a triad is a 3-note chord stacked on top of each other. So it outlines that tonality of D minor. It has an extended middle section with false entries, overlapping of the subjects, which is stretta. There you go. Tonic, which is reestablished. That's the final statement of an answer over sustained pedal and bass. This is very, very important. So what happens is the subject is stated, blah, 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 crap, 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 happens, crap, stuff, everywhere, blah. It gets all messy, boom, sustained pedal in the bass, and that brings you back to that first tonality, which is bringing you back to the subject. And the final chord is usually major, which is a common feature in Baroque music. Bonus question on your exam, that's called a piccolo D third. All right. This is an example of kind of a breakdown of what we're going to listen to, and we're going to go listen to that right now. Whoop-de-whoop. Okay. Here we go. We're going to do a listen for because it's going to make way more sense.
Here's what to listen for in the 4-part fugue Contrapunctus 1 from the Art of Fugue by J.S. Bach. A fugue is a composition in which a single theme is used to create a large portion of the piece. The theme appears in different layers of the texture. In this recording, you'll hear the theme in the low, low-middle, high-middle, and high ranges of a keyboard instrument, creating 4 different layers of the texture. When you listen to the beginning of this fugue, you will hear the theme in the high-middle range first, like this.
That's the subject.
Then the theme is played in a higher range. The third time you hear it, the theme is in the low range of the keyboard. And finally, the fourth time you hear the theme, it's in the low-middle range, which is a bit more difficult to hear.
So, I don't know if you were able to hear each section, but it was the ba da 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 dee. That was the theme, the subject. Now we're going to talk about the subject and answer.
When the theme is played the first time in a fugue, it's called the subject. In this fugue, the subject sounds like this. The second time the theme is played in any fugue, it's called an answer. It goes by a different name because it begins on a pitch that is different from the first statement.
That's the key, guys.
Listen to the answer.
Different pitch. That's the key, guys. Different pitch. So on your exam, if I were to ask you something about a subject versus an answer, the answer starts on a different pitch. That is the part that you need to understand.
All fugues have a similar structure. They begin with the exposition, the first section in which the subject or answer are heard in all layers of the texture. Listen closely to the exposition.
Subject's been stated. Answer. Another answer.
The middle and closing sections feature statements of the subject and/or answer. Here is the middle section.
So the subject and answers are not as quite as easy to hear.
And the closing section begins like this. There are also sections of a fugue called episodes, in which neither the subject nor the answer is played. Here are examples of episodes.
So that theme is not heard at all.
Here's another example of an episode. Here's a third example of an episode. And finally, this episode. So remember to listen for the opening subject, followed by other statements of it in imitative polyphony. You will also hear episodes, sections with contrasting music in which neither the subject nor the answer is played.
So they include a video here of the performance. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. I just want you to watch someone performing on an organ. Oh, they're doing a string orchestra format. Okay. Which is really cool, but I want an organ. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys, before I leave you, I want to show you an example of a harpsichord, and I also want to show you someone playing an organ so that you get the idea. Let's see, actually, let's go back and see if they have a harpsichord and an organ here, because that would be so much easier. Haha. They do. Yay, harpsichord. So you can hear and see what I'm talking about. So here's a harpsichord. So notice the total different sound than from a piano. Let's see if it'll show you possibly inside the keyboard, because that's kind of what I want you guys to do. So you can these keys are white, which is fun and interesting. Still. No, it doesn't. So I'll show you maybe a video inside the harpsichord, but that's a harpsichord. And an organ. Well, there we go. These are the stops right here. This is what it's, and that's how they make things softer or louder. See the two keyboards? And there's also pedals down here that he's using with his feet. This controls the volume of air coming through the pipes. So we just added with the foot pedal. So you can see the foot pedals here. It blows my brain. So there's a keyboard down here, the black keys, and there's the white keys. It blows my brain, I'm telling you guys. My mom used to play the organ. It's just so cool. Anyway, you can watch the rest of this video on your own time, but I wanted to give you kind of an example of what an organ is. Now I want to show you I just want to show you inside the instrument so you can see how it works here.
What is in it?
So there's the little
tiny thing
quill right
that
there.
looks like a bit of like a guitar pick made out of plastic.
It's right there.
So here, if I can point to it, that itself right there is the actual pick that I'm touching with my fingernail.
It wouldn't be plastic,
This felt
obviously,
thing
back
is
in
a
the day.
damper that comes down. And when the
Sort of
string,
stop the sound.
when I'm done playing it, I drop the damper and it mutes the string.
This is what's happening
On
when
this
you press the
instrument, there's
keys.
2 courses of strings. And so this is what the sound of one of them is. Alright? And then much like a 12-string guitar, you can have a second set turned on and you can have 2 at once for a much richer sound. For each key that
So that just kind of gives you an idea. Main thing I wanted you to see was these right here. So that's what's actually plucking the strings. That's what a harpsichord does. Since harp chord. Cool. Well, that concludes our topic of Baroque. We will move on to Prelude 4, which will be moving into the classical era. So please make sure you're watching these lectures, completing your quizzes. You have until, I believe it's next Friday, for your quizzes to be completed. So that concludes our